Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Simon Marciniak. I work as a lawyer in a central London law firm. I live in northeast London, and I've been a Muslim for approximately just over 5 years now. I first heard about Ashura through, the friend who introduced me to Islam in the first place. It's somebody I used to work with, and when he was introducing me to the principles of Islam, he also mentioned as a separate subject the story of Imam Hussein, the story of Ashura. It wasn't really the reason. It wasn't really. I would say it wasn't really a factor behind my conversion. It wasn't at the forefront of my thinking, but it's a sort of a feeling I think that developed over time. I suppose my first real contact with the story was when I went to Lebanon in 2010, which was shortly before I converted. I went with my friend to the Bekaa Valley to Baalbek. It was actually to see the Roman ruins there, but we stumbled upon the shrine of the daughter of Imam Hussein, who Khawla alayhi salam. Obviously, it's quite an unreal event in many ways, because it's hard to understand how so soon after the Prophet came with the message of Islam, how there could have been this huge split between, on the one hand, this group who claimed to be Muslims, who claimed to be upholding the Islamic faith, and on the other hand, the family of the Prophet, who are proclaiming something completely different. And to have this confrontation in the way seemed a bit unreal to me, and it's something you can't really quite grasp when you hear it for the first time. I went to Karbala at the end of 2012 with a group. I didn't do the whole walk on that occasion, and in fact I fell ill. I felt quite ill with gastroenteritis when I was in Najaf, so I couldn't really. So I stayed with a family friend for the week while the rest of the group travelled to Karbala either by foot or by coach. And I thought I was never going to make it because I was stuck in Najaf. The roads were closed off, and there was no obvious way of me getting there. Because I was still recovering from illness at that time. I still really wanted to go and complete the journey. But through a friend of a friend of a friend, we managed to find this person who was travelling, who worked for the government, who could take me in a car through the various checkpoints. I got to one checkpoint, was dropped off there, and then waited for an ambulance to be sent from the Haramain, to collect me and to bring me into the centre of Karbala through this throng of people. And if you know Al Bayn at that time, it's just completely manic, wall-to-wall people. So there's no normal transport into the centre of Karbala, and it had to be an ambulance from the Haramain that took me in. So it was, and then when we were approaching the Haramain, we had to take a detour because there was a pickpocket who'd stolen a wallet. So there was a big clamour, and the ambulance shot off after this pickpocket and eventually caught up with him in this field and surrounded him. And I was there in the back of this ambulance in the middle of this commotion. Eventually I made it to the hotel and into Karbala, but it was quite an amazing experience. I never thought it would have unfolded in that way. But eventually I arrived in Karbala, and it was this very sort of a whirlwind of emotions, really, from feeling ill, for having this experience of travelling there. It was quite unsettling in many ways. And Al Bayn itself was a very intense experience. It is a bit like Hajj in terms of the numbers of people. There's even more so there. It's sort of wall-to-wall people, crowds everywhere. And it is, and then going into the shrine itself is an extremely intense experience, and one you don't forget. The chanting, the repetitions of noise, and generally the clamour and euphoria. That's how I describe it. It's the euphoria of the occasion which really strikes you during Al Bayn. Probably not the best thing for me in my state. I think I would, if I was going for the first time, I would have gone during a more quiet period where I could reflect on my own, which you can do on Hajj. You know, there are times on Hajj when you can reflect quietly to yourself. Yeah, it was an interesting experience and one I'll never forget. I think listening to the stories it's important, I think, to have the reminders of what the people achieved over the course of these 10 days, from Muslim ibn Aqil, from Abbas, through Khur, through Imam Hussein himself. All these people have different aspects to the story which bring home, it invokes a lot of humility, I'd say. It makes you feel very grounded to listen again repeatedly to these stories and remember why they behaved in the way they did. I think there are probably two people I'd say I drew particular inspiration from for different reasons. Khur is one of them, because you think of the way why that happened. This person who was on the brink of going to hell, according to the accounts, who then suddenly turns on the day of Ashura, that's a particular striking personality for me, because it shows that, particularly coming from a non-Muslim background, you look at the people around you, and you know that it just reminds you to give the benefit of the doubt all the time, to the nth degree, not to be judgmental about people, not to condemn people, even people who are against you, who are attacking your faith. It just reminds you that you know, there's a spark even in the most, well, from your point of view, corrupt person that could just turn them into something much better. That's one person I particularly admire, but an event which is very striking about Ashura. The other personage is Zainab, because one of the messages which I think tends to get forgotten about Karbala is it is about sort of transformation. So the fact that she was brought to the event, and that she developed into this person that could then address Yazid in his palace, shows to me that in a very extreme way, she was brought out of her comfort zone, if I can say that, and she developed into this very strong, very powerful personality in her own right, who then on her own took the religion with her. What's particularly been interesting about my own relationship with Ashura since I converted is that, you know, since then, we've had the Arab Spring, we've had the revolutions, and we've had the deadly mutation into Daesh and what they're doing in Iraq. And what you hear all the time from that is people saying, well, for example, you have these girls from Bethnal Green who have gone, journeyed through Turkey through to Syria, and you hear non-Muslims saying, well, you know, these are normal people from normal Muslim backgrounds. There must be something in Islam which makes them behave like this. So there must be something particularly violent, inherently violent about the Islamic faith which turns people this way. And that's where I think the Karbala message is particularly important, because it shows that if Imam Hussein was on one side and Yazid was on another, they must have been fighting for two different things. Yazid was the one who was beheading people. Yazid was the one who was oppressing people exactly the same way as Daesh are doing now. So you can see that the Imam was prepared to sacrifice himself and his own family in opposition to that cause, which is exactly what the sort of thing we're seeing today. So from that point of view, the importance of the Karbala episode is to portray, particularly to non-Muslims, that what these barbarians are doing is nothing to do with Islam. There is an alternative version which the events of Ashura and the events of Karbala highlight, and so from that you build on that concept. See, well, look what it did to the women, look what it did to Zainab. That there is a version of Islam which promotes the rights of women, which promotes the interests of women, which promotes the development of the community and of individuals, and it's not about killing and slaying and keeping people in a state of continual oppression. Doing the work I do, being a lawyer, you're expected to be on the side of justice in everything you do. So in every letter you write, every word you utter, it has to be in the pursuit of truth and in the pursuit of honesty. So what Kerbala shows you is that well, the pursuit of truth is something to die for. It's something you have to live. Every breath has to be in the pursuit of justice and the pursuit of fairness. And of course, there's a common humanity, of course, to Kerbala as well. It's as Imam said at the end, towards the end of his life, he said, "Well, if you don't accept what I'm saying, if you hate me, at least behave like human beings." So there is a basic humanity to what Imam Hussein was projecting, which applies to everybody, not just Muslims, not just believers. And I think that is the fundamentals of Kerbala, which we need to promote in our own lives. And it's something that struck me when I was in Kerbala during Arba'in. You have an awful lot of mawaqib, a lot of groups doing this and that, but they're all sort of doing the same thing. It's the same sort of procession, the same matam, and there's not a great deal of diversity, or dare I say imagination there, which is not a criticism of them necessarily, because I understand that this is such a revolutionary thing following the fall of Saddam to have this happening again. So you can see it's in its sort of infancy, if you like. But I was thinking when I was there, well, at some point you'd like to see some more imagination. So, for example, I was thinking it'd be nice to have a sort of a sound and light show, or a street artist recreations of the battle in the street, face painting, these sorts of things that are more common to Western culture, which you can see as something that would be a good thing to have in the commemorations there. As far as stuff here is concerned, yes, I think there is scope for being more diversified, by people using people's artistic skills more in the same way. Maybe creating a film, doing a film of aspects of the story would be a good idea. Plays, that sort of thing, would be good. Even an open-air majlis would be good. I mean, why have it indoors? I think that's something is impressive, particularly about the Lebanese commemorations during Ashura. Theirs is all outdoors, and to have a sort of a recitation outdoors instead of inside would be a very radical, but I think a very striking thing. Books about the historical research is also an important thing. So if from the point of view academic study, I think more should be done into who the personalities were, where they came from, what the reasons for the battle, what happened afterwards. For example, it's often said that without Imam Hussein, Islam would have died, but I think more needs to be done to explain, well, how did it sort of go from there? What was, after the battle, how did it survive? How was the memories? How was the practices revived in the community after that? I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure I do much preparation, but once I'm in it, I try and participate as much as I can. Even if I can't attend a lecture, I at least try and watch what I can online. And as I said earlier, just to reflect on the personalities there, and to get this sense of humility, at least through these 10 days. Even if I can't get out very much or do very much, I at least try and do that to ground myself and to reflect on what the stories mean.